हमारी सोसाइटी में बहुत ज़्यादा होता है कि गुड मार्क्स लीड टू अ सक्सेसफुल लाइफ. डू यू थिंक दैट इज ट्रू?
जिनके मार्क्स सबसे अच्छे थे वो आज लाइफ में सबसे ज़्यादा स्ट्रगल भी कर रहे हैं. एलिना एंड ग्रांड कार्डोन दे टुक अ कॉन्शियस डिसीजन दैट यार हमने इनको स्कूल में नहीं रखना, बिकॉज दे लाइक स्कूल में इनको रखे मतलब ये क्या सीखेंगे.
एंड आई थिंक स्कूल्स हमें मेन चीज़ें नहीं सिखाते हैं, विच इज़ फाइनेंशियल लिटरेसी, सिविक सेंस,
Very true.
कुकिंग. द मेन लाइफ skills we need aren't taught in schools. I don't know why.
Unfortunately, my belief is that a lot of what's being taught, there is zero value in the real world.
What do you think are the three most important skills which schools should teach? Why don't schools teach sales, persuasion, negotiation, communication?
They don't.
Do you think schools are intentionally teaching students to become followers rather than leaders?
Just create civil servants. They want to create, workers. They want to just create, people who would feed the, British machinery. Unfortunately, not much has changed, right? जो curriculum है, जो style of teaching है, उनके अंग्रेजों के ज़माने से ही चल रहा है अभी तक. बच्चों को सिखाया जा रहा है स्कूल के अंदर, मतलब उसकी रेलेवेंस और वैल्यू क्या है. एंड आज जो बच्चे बैठे हैं क्लासरूम के अंदर वो भी टीचर को क्वेश्चन कर रहे हैं कि सबको बाहर भागने की डिजायर है कि नहीं जी विलायत जाना है, ऑस्ट्रेलिया में पढ़ेंगे, यूएसए में पढ़ेंगे, यूके में पढ़ेंगे. द फ्यूचर लाइज इन इंडिया.
स्कूल में हमें बचपन से एक फॉर्मूला सिखाया जाता है, गुड मार्क्स इज इक्वल टू सक्सेसफुल लाइफ. लेकिन रियल वर्ल्ड में हमें एक अजीब पैटर्न दिखता है. बहुत बार स्कूल टॉपर्स जो होते हैं वो स्ट्रगल कर रहे होते हैं, और जो बैक बेंचर्स या एवरेज स्टूडेंट्स हैं वो बहुत बार उनसे बहुत ज़्यादा अच्छा कर रहे होते हैं. तो सवाल ये है कि हमारा एजुकेशन सिस्टम क्या हमें एग्ज़ाम्स के लिए प्रिपेयर कर रहा है और फॉर अ बेटर लाइफ. तो आज के एपिसोड में हम ब्रेक कर रहे हैं मार्क्स और सक्सेस के बीच का रियल रिलेशनशिप, वो सारे लाइफ स्किल्स और एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप, सेल्स स्किल्स जो स्कूल्स कभी नहीं सिखाते, और वो मिस्टेक्स जो स्टूडेंट्स और पेरेंट्स अननोइंगली कर रहे हैं. फॉर दिस वी हैव गौरव भगत. ही इज़ एन एंटरप्रेन्योर, इन्वेस्टर एंड अ पॉडकास्टर हु वर्क्स विद ग्लोबल कंपनीज अक्रॉस द वर्ल्ड. उनके पास डायरेक्ट एक्सेस है टू द ब्राइटेस्ट माइंड्स इन द वर्ल्ड. Gaurav Bhagat on SchoolCast with Avyakt. Hello Gaurav sir, welcome to SchoolCast with Avyakt.
Thank you so much, Avyakt. It's a pleasure being here today and looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. It's a very unique episode for us also, क्योंकि हम usually school owners, we talk to school principals, then we talk to people who are in the education policy making.
Right.
Today is a very unique and a different episode, so can you please introduce yourself?
Of course. So again, Gaurav Bhagat, and what you said was interesting because one category of people who are still very close to my heart is school kids, college kids. Because जब मैंने भी अपनी पहली कंपनी स्टार्ट की थी, मैं भी उस टाइम स्कूल के अंदर ही था, और उस टाइम ना कोई मेंटरशिप थी, ना कोई गाइडेंस थी, इंस्टाग्राम भी नहीं था, यूट्यूब तो खैर काफ़ी देर बाद में आया था एज वेल. And उस time there was a lot of misguidance that was there, a lot of mistakes were made, and my belief always has been to give back because today I run a few companies, and in fact जो मेरा acronym है which you may have seen on my LinkedIn is SPICE. So I am a speaker, I am a podcaster, I'm an investor, I'm a consultant to several organizations, and of course I'm an entrepreneur and I run a few companies. So in a nutshell, that's who I am, but someone who really believes in giving back, empowering. And as I mentioned, school kids, college kids, young entrepreneurs, these are people who are very close to my heart. So happy to be here today.
Amazing. We talk about school education a lot, but one of the most important things which we miss is the skill part, the skill education.
So true.
Now the NEP is talking about skills. A lot of people are talking about skills, but जो उसके depth में जाने की बात है, सिर्फ surface level की बात हो रही है अभी.
Correct.
So today, just to lay the foundation of this episode, we are going to focus on the skill education part.
Love it.
So first of all, हमारी सोसाइटी में बहुत ज़्यादा होता है कि good marks lead to a successful life. Do you think that is true?
So I'm just thinking back to my schools, and I actually went to 3 different schools.
Okay.
मेरी शुरुआत हुई थी at St. Columbus in Delhi, so that's where I studied till class 5. And over there, and even the people I was with, the most studious, crazy marks, done really well in life from that perspective. Today they're all MDs of various in amongst the big 4 and large corporations and all of that. Post that I went to Lawrence School Sana, which being near Kasoli, class 6 through 10 I was there. And that was more about, so Columbus was all studies, right? Sana was basically very all-round education, right? So, like what they say, jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
And then my last 2 years, I came down to DPS Mathura Road. And
Oh, okay. I'm also from DPS Mathura.
oh, love
Wow.
it.
Yeah.
So DPS Mathura Road, last 2 years I was there, and there I was, so of course when I came from Sana, because my grades had kind of not been the best, I got only humanities as a course, and I had that along with eco and math, which is kind of a funny combination. But I'm thinking back to the people in my class, जिनके मार्क्स सबसे अच्छे थे, वो आज लाइफ में सबसे ज़्यादा स्ट्रगल भी कर रहे हैं. और जो बैक बेंचर्स थे, एक माई टीचर होती थी, वोंट टेक हर नेम बिकॉज जस्ट इन केस शी लिसनिंग इन, बट शी वेंट टू अ रियली क्लोज फ्रेंड ऑफ माइन एंड शी सेड तेरा कुछ नहीं हो पाएगा, तू खत्म हो जाएगा. When he was really struggling and he had 2 non-academic subjects, and this guy even at that time looks up and he says, मैम एक दिन ना आपका बेटा मेरे से नौकरी मांगने आएगा. मतलब उसको तो बाहर कर दिया 2-4 थप्पड़ मार के. But it actually happened because this guy Trace is one of the top designers in the country, and funnily his kid actually came to ask for a job. But I'm just thinking back to the people who were the most successful out of the DPS gang are people who were the complete backbenchers, and sabne bola tera kuch nahi hoga, and there were many such cases, and those people have actually gone out and crushed it. And it's interesting that even amongst the scenarians, a lot of people who really struggled, and were not getting the best marks academically, today have achieved phenomenal things across, different areas, different, professions. So I would say that you can't typecast.
So I see a lot of reels also, and when you pass out school, you go into the real world, so you realize that जो C grade लाते थे, ये बहुत reels आती हैं. आपके C grade आते हैं, so you will be the leader. B grade आते हैं, so you will be okay, but A grade वाले will be working for somebody else.
Again, I think it's possible to some extent. I think it's also a big role has to be played by family as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like when I was in school and, I want to pursue the path of, entrepreneurship or at least side hustle. My mother and father, my parents बोला कर, मतलब tension मत ले. But there were other friends who want to pursue that path and they were slapped up and said, focus on your studies, ये काम धंधे की बात मत करो. And of course, a very different time, right? I'm talking about finishing school in 1994. And that time entrepreneurship was almost nil. I mean, no one thought about it. Today तो मतलब आजकल तो 12, 13, 14 साल के जो बच्चे हैं, मतलब they're already thinking AI use करेंगे, company बनाएंगे, monetization हो रही है. I mean, content creators, and we're of course on a podcast today. Content creators are sometimes starting at 8, 9, 10 साल की उम्र पे, and अच्छे पैसे कमा रहे हैं. So the game has changed. But I think that yes, to some extent it is about the grades, but I think it's also about the atmosphere at home. Entrepreneurship was also a thing for which a lot of parents were very risk averse. They're like, नहीं ये तो करना नहीं है, right? और वो एक टाइम होता था सब बोलते थे डॉक्टर, इंजीनियर, मतलब प्रोग्रामर, मतलब वही चीज़ें हैं जो आपको करनी है. अगर किसी आप बोलते बिजनेस में जाना है, तो लाइक बेटा मतलब बेटी क्या बात कर रहे हो, राइट? मतलब वो तो हमारे लिए नहीं है, बिजनेसमैन तो चोर होते हैं. सो those kind of misconceptions were there, which has changed a lot now. But it's interesting that you mentioned that, and we always joke around it when some of the backbenchers, and of course I've gone from being in the top 5 in Columbus to being somewhere in the second rung in Sana to getting a compartment in my 11th. तो 11वीं में compartment आई थी, thanks to my friends जो अपने course के अंदर थे, and then just very barely managed to take the retest and pass. But otherwise I would have been 11th fail. And today when I'm out there training and coaching some of the smartest CEOs in the country, so it's amusing also. Yeah.
You have a very nice feeling when you think about the child who had a compartment in grade 11.
Bilkul. Yeah.
So I was doing an episode with the ex-chairperson of NIOS today only,
right.
The National Institute of Open Schooling.
Right.
And I realized कि हमारे जो boards हैं, CBSE, ICSE, be it IB or anything, soon I think all is going to come to par with open schooling, because when we look at billionaires in the West, when we look at Grant Cardone, or when we look at anyone, they are doing homeschooling for their children. So do you think these boards are preparing us for exams or for life?
So it's very interesting because Grant Cardone की आपने बात की, I have known Grant Cardone, for many years. I've seen the girls, growing up, and at various events, you see the 10x on my jacket. So that comes from Grant Cardone's 10x, for whom I'm a licensee. And Elena and Grant Cardone, they took a conscious decision that यार हमने इनको स्कूल में नहीं रखना, because they like स्कूल में इनको रखे मतलब ये क्या सीखेंगे. So it was just their thought process, and it's happening a lot in some, of course, very affluent circles. So it's happening with the billionaires and the super wealthy and all that they're like, we'll travel to a place. अगर किसी
Yeah.
जगह के बारे में सीखना है तो 7 days जाएंगे, रोम में spend करेंगे, मतलब you know we will just immerse ourselves in the culture of the place. And you know, for some people who may not have those kind of resources, I still see people, like we have some friends even in India who what they went ahead and did is that they actually took their, you know, kids out of school and they said, you know what, we're going to homeschool them, you know, we're going to let them pursue, you know, their hobbies or the sports they want to play, you know, could be cricket or golf or soccer, whatever it is. And I just think that, you know, unfortunately, and of course, you know, you're from the industry, you know, you would be hearing this a lot as well, that schools have not kept up with what is required in today's time. आज का टाइम मतलब AI का ज़माना है, right? My son and daughter, I mean, you know, they're of course we send them to Kodaikanal to study. And you know, at Cody, I was remembering 3 years ago, the headmaster was saying, "Oh, AI nahi use karna." But now, you know, they're saying that AI has to actively be taught in schools,
AI
and you know, it has
use
to be,
karna.
yeah. And they're like, there is absolutely okay. And kids are now creating, you know, apps on Emergent or Replit or Lovable, vibe coding हो रही है.
Yeah.
मतलब 12-13-14 साल के बच्चे कर रहे हैं. My daughter, when she was 12, she designed the logo for my podcast, and she said, इसका पैसे क्या मिलेंगे? So you know, she was actually thinking from that perspective. She started a business in Cody when she was there, where she was actually going ahead and she was, you know, creating, you know, various tattoos and rakhis and whatnot, and they were
Which
actually
school
selling
is
them.
this?
This is Kodi International, so Kodaikanal International School.
Amazing.
So yeah, and so entrepreneurship is actually encouraged over there as well.
Yeah. And I think schools हमें main चीज़ें नहीं सिखाते हैं, which is financial literacy, civic sense,
Very true.
cooking. The main life skills we need aren't taught in schools. I don't know why, and it's not progressing the way it should be. So when I was talking to the NIOS person, ma'am was telling me about the progressive mindset which NIOS had even 10 years back. तो वो 10 साल 15 साल से ये वहाँ पर है कि आप आर्ट्स के साथ साइंस भी पढ़ सकते हो, कॉमर्स भी, वो हमारे बोर्ड्स में अभी तक नहीं है.
नहीं है. And you look at liberal art, you know, colleges today. I mean, look at Ashoka here. You know, look at you know, Kriya down south, Flame. So these are colleges that are saying, boss, आप कुछ भी curriculum उठा लो, right? You can do a mix and match of whatever. आपको मतलब, you know, psychology करना है, उसके साथ theater करना है, music करना है, आप करो, right? So there's no foundation. Like हमारे time में तो था, okay, English honors मतलब English honors, you know, history honors मतलब history honors, you know, BCom would be BCom. So I think that there's a little bit of flexibility that's coming, but it's too few and far between, right? There are too few colleges that are offering it. There are too few schools also that are saying, you know, okay, let's try and experiment, but it has to change. Because I think that, you know, unfortunately, my belief is that a lot of what's being taught, there is zero value, okay, in the real world. You know, we hire a lot of people in our organizations. You know, we've got a few companies, 100-150, you know, people on board. When people are applying and they say, I've done, you know, this course and this MBA and everything else, I'm like, you know, unfortunately, आपकी जो अभी तक जो भी आपने सीखा ना, मेरे लिए उसकी कोई वैल्यू नहीं है. ऐसे हम स्टार्ट करेंगे तो जीरो से स्टार्ट करेंगे. And you know, I will train you up in my image and we'll do what we want to do, because real world skills are not being taught.
Yeah. So what do you think are the 3 most important skills which school should teach?
It's an interesting question. So I think one of the top things is the attitude is very, very important, right? And I think what Sana gave us, you know, is something that I talk about a lot, because the other day I was at a Sana event and the press was there and they're talking about AI, and I said, but Sanarians तो AI 100 साल से कर रहे हैं. तो इसे सर मैं समझा नहीं, because you know AI तो अभी आया है. तो ऐसे नहीं, सिनारियन का AI मतलब अडेप्टेड इंटेलिजेंस. तो मतलब कुछ भी हो जाए ना, मतलब हम अडेप्ट करके मतलब वी आर गोना टेक इट फॉरवर्ड. सो यू नो दैट थिंग अबाउट, यू नो, नेवर गिव इन, व्हिच इज ऑफ कोर्स, यू नो, Sana's motto as well. So I think that attitude of never ever throwing in the towel. Things are going to happen, bad things are going to happen. There will be repercussions of, you know, let's say economy and, you know, all of that. So you know, I think to go on and keep going on, so attitude is actually, you know, paramount. I think the second thing which is very, very important is be very open to be a learner, you know, so the entire lifelong learning piece, and not rote learning जो किताबों में लिखा है, मतलब, you know, जो अपना history books के अंदर लिखा है. So I think it's not only that, you know, that rote learning, but just always keep your ears and eyes open to what's happening in the world. So, you know, if, you know, AI is popping up, then you've got to, you know, you've got to immerse yourself in it. AI cannot be learned in a course. AI cannot be learned, you know, in a book. AI cannot, you cannot go to a management institute and learn AI, because that curriculum of 2.5 years ago is already redundant.
Outdated,
right? So it's always like, okay, what's happening, you know, be in that space. So I think that aspect is very, very important. And I think the third thing, which to my mind is super, super important in this world that we live in today, is communication skills. And how are you actually going ahead and, you know, speaking, how are you getting your message across? Because I think that is something which is paramount, because that's not going away. And it cannot only be in one English, right? One language like English. It has to be, matlab, you know, ideally in 2-3 different languages. And I think that's very important. So those would be, you know, I think 3 of the top things that actually come to mind.
But do you think attitude is a skill?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, it's something that it doesn't just naturally happen for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It needs a little bit of training, to actually get into your
The
DNA
right
as well.
attitude.
Because even Cardone, I mean, when I was with him, he said, there's something called the first rule of selling, and I'm like, what is the first rule of selling? He said, always, always, always agree, okay, with the person on the other side. So let's say you've had a different point of view with your wife, or
Yeah.
or your kids, or let's say a colleague, or
Yeah.
your parents. Start with agreement. So
Okay.
it says, so someone says, oh, I have this problem with you. Say, I understand, I get it. And the reason I reacted this way is because of XYZ. So you give your point, but you start with agreement. The thing is, most people actually start with disagreement. They're like, "तुझे ऐसा लगता है, बाकी लोग तो नहीं सोचते." So the point is that, and that is something that takes training. Like,
Yeah.
agreement doesn't come to you naturally.
Yeah.
But that is one of the top things that actually help you move forward. I mean, other places in attitude. Sometimes we don't like to be criticized. We don't like to be told that, okay, what we're doing is perhaps not right.
Yeah.
All of these things are things that you kind of train yourself towards.
Okay.
So hence I say, from that perspective, I say attitude is one of the top skills that people need to have.
I think this is one of the key takeaways from me for this from this conversation. के agreement, wife के साथ you have to agree first, and then you can argue or whatever. But if you agree, the situation goes down 100 points if you've agreed for the first time.
I'll give you an example of how agreement worked at home one time. So I came into the house. It was just after the pandemic. My daughter must have been 10, 11 years old, and she said, Papa, can I have the iPad? And my thing is agreement, right? And then Mrinalini is in the back. She's doing some work, and she said, no, she's been watching TV all day. No iPad for her. So I say, you know what, Noida, you can have the iPad. And Mrinalini is looking at me, and she goes, I hope you can make your room in the guest room, because you're not obviously sleeping in the bedroom today. I said, but if I don't give it to you today, and I give it to you tomorrow, and I give it to you for 15 minutes more, is that acceptable? She looks at me and she goes, हाँ पापा चलेगा. So then she's happy, wife's happy, I'm happy. So it's like agree, but have a caveat kind of with it. So I've just found that works really well in business, at home. So just something
Definitely.
worth a shot.
The most surprising thing I find about life skills and skill education in schools is sales, communication, persuasion, negotiation. This is a part of daily life. ये आपको रोज करना है, चाहे आप अपने घर में बात कर रहे हो, या you are buying something, some vegetables from a vendor. Why don't schools teach sales, persuasion, negotiation, communication?
They don't. In fact, I'll give you an example. So I do go into colleges and I speak. And again, a very famous, girls' college in Delhi. I'm not going to name it again. But 120, 130 girls, in the room. And I'm starting out. It's a 1 hour, 1.5 hour session on sales. I'm like, how many of you, feel that you want to get into sales, or sales is going to play an important role in your life?
Yeah.
Not one hand goes up. Not one hand goes up. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, okay. And I'm like, as I'm, building up now the session, I say, okay, आज, Friday night है, आपको बाहर जाना है, आपकी डेडलाइन जो है वो 11 बजे है, लेकिन आप 12 बजे तक जाना चाहते हैं. अगर आपने अपने पेरेंट्स को कन्विंस कर दिया कि मैं 11 नहीं 12 बजे वापस आऊँगा, वो भी सेल है.
Absolutely.
Right? I say, you like a boy. Okay, and that boy is, going to require some conviction and convincing. And if you were able to convince that boy to go out with you, I said, even that is a sale.
Yeah.
राइट. आई सेड, आज लंच के टाइम आपको इंडियन खाना है, आपके दोस्त को चाइनीज़ खाना है, लेकिन आप कन्विंस करके उनको इंडियन पे ले गए.
बिल्कुल.
तो ऐसे वो भी एक सेल है.
बिल्कुल.
राइट. एंड दिस वेंट ऑन फॉर अबाउट एन आवर एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट. एंड देन आफ्टर दैट आई सेड, हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू नाउ थिंक दैट सेल्स इज गोना प्ले अ रोल इन योर लाइफ? 85% ऑफ द हैंड्स आर अप. राइट. एंड देन आई एम टॉकिंग टू द गर्ल्स लेटर. आई सेड, आप सेल्स के अंदर क्यों नहीं आना चाहते? दे नहीं, पापा ने बोला था कि सेल्स की नौकरी तो नहीं करनी. ऐसे क्यों नहीं करनी? दे नहीं, सेल्स मतलब रिजेक्शन. आई सेड, रिजेक्शन तो सब जगह होगी. ऐसे जब आप नौकरी मांगने जाओगे, वट एवर फील्ड यू चूज, वहाँ भी आपको रिजेक्शन मिलेगी. जब आप बिजनेस में आओगे, वहाँ भी आप ऑर्डर लेने जाओगे, वहाँ आपको रिजेक्शन मिलेगी. ऐसे यू गो आस्क सम बॉय, ऐसे वहाँ भी हो सकता है रिजेक्शन होगी. तो ऐसे रिजेक्शन इज अ पार्ट ऑफ लाइफ. देन शी सेज, अच्छा, अनदर गर्ल सेज, पर सर इसमें अकाउंटेबिलिटी है. तो ऐसे अगर आप अकाउंटेबिलिटी से भाग रहे हो, फिर तो दिक्कत है. बिकॉज देन यू विल बी हेल्ड अकाउंटेबल इन सम रोल. दिस अनदर गर्ल सेज, सर मुझे तो HR में आना है. I said, मेरे हिसाब से, I said, in my limited understanding, HR has to be the number one salesperson.
Absolutely. Right? You're selling for the company.
बिल्कुल. आप टैलेंट आपने लेके आना है, अपना एक बार लेके आए तो रिटेन भी करना है. तो आपकी जो कन्विंसिंग पावर है, ऐसे सबसे ज़्यादा सेल्स तो HR का बंदा करता है, या बंदी करती है इन दिस केस. And they're like, sir, आज तक तो हमने सोचा ही नहीं ऐसे. And I said, where is your negative commentary for sales coming from? And I've seen this repeatedly with a lot of schools and colleges spoken at. They're like, वो पिक्चर थी ना रॉकेट सिंह सेल्समैन ऑफ द ईयर, मतलब उसने बोला भाई और कुछ नहीं मिला इसलिए मैं सेल्स के अंदर घुस गया. मतलब वो डायलॉग जो रणवीर कपूर ने मारा था, मतलब इट जस्ट डिस्ट्रॉयड द माइंडसेट ऑफ एवरीवन. आई सेड, बट इफ यू लुक एट दैट मूवी ऑल्सो, आगे जाके उसने नोट भी छापे, पर नोट छापे बिकॉज वो सेल्स किए उसने.
Absolutely.
तो आई सेड वो पॉइंट क्यों मिस कर रहे हो? आई सेड वो डायलॉग तो आपने पकड़ लिया, लेकिन जो आगे हुआ वो आपने नहीं देखा. So it's tragic that sales is not taught. And one time there was a boot camp that I was doing, and Cosmo Films की पूरी टीम आई हुई थी. And there was this one girl and she said, sir, मैंने आज MBA in sales कर लिया. And I said, but sales के अंदर तो MBA नहीं होता. She नहीं, आप समझे नहीं. I said, बताओ. Because MBA का मतलब मुझे बेचना आता है. So that was her MBA,
Yeah.
right? So it's great, when that kind of feedback comes. But I wish sales is taught more, because that one skill that everyone needs to master.
Yeah, and I think you do sales. I also do sales all the time, and I love doing it. मैं सबको बोलता हूँ कि आप जितना ज़्यादा करोगे उतना मज़ा आने लगेगा. जैसे ही एक conversion होगी, कुछ होगा,
It's
you'll
a high,
feel
no?
good.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, if you were sitting in front of a school principal or a school owner, if you had to tell them 3 ways why sales is the most important subject schools should teach. So, what are the 3 reasons why schools should teach sales?
So, let's take from the perspective of, let's say a school principal or a school owner. I guess, what do they really want? Number one is that, and maybe we can even take it up to college level. So, I think one thing that they really want is that they want placements to happen, right? At least in colleges.
Yeah.
They want people to go into
That
like
is
good
the
companies. And
selling point.
Of course, right? तो आज के टाइम में जो AI का ज़माना है, so many, areas are just going to get wiped out.
Yeah.
Consulting, for example,
Yeah.
graphic designing,
Yeah.
so many of these careers are just
Absolutely.
finished. And in fact, and today only I was reading that I think one IT company from Noida only had given 100 letters, and now they told them that wait kar lo, because all of these people are coming in consulting, programming,
needed,
coding.
yeah.
जरूरत ही नहीं है अब तो.
Yeah.
मतलब क्लाउड कोड, मतलब क्लाउड कोवर्क, मतलब वैसे ही अपना सब कर
Yeah.
दे. लेकिन सेल्स ऐसी चीज़ है जो अभी भी बहुत ज़रूरत है उसकी. Usually people who are going to go out there and meet, I always, and I learned this from someone else who was on my course, where it said email always beats email. And email मतलब आंखों का मेल.
Absolutely.
Sitting across each other. This podcast could have been virtual,
Yeah.
right? But इसका वो impact नहीं होता जो आज है. Because today we're able to look into, each other's
Yeah.
eyes, shake hands, all of that. So email always beats email. Now, what is going to happen in sales also? You will need people who are going to have to go out there, meet, and that. So that aspect. So sales, one thing is obviously, that it's going to create a lot of jobs, a lot of opportunities. The second thing that I think is very important, maybe a little longer term perspective लेके चल रहा हूँ. लेकिन अगर एक alumni है जो काफ़ी success हुई है उसको life के अंदर, he or she'll always want to come back and give back to the school.
Yeah.
In terms of donations, like
Yeah.
like when our school at Sana, when we did our 25 years, we all took a sizable sum of money and we donated it towards the organization, a building, a robotics lab, and all of that. So the second thing is if your alumni is done well, obviously you're going to come back and give back to the school monetarily, but also they will speak well about the school. They will speak well कि क्या हुआ था, क्या हमने वहाँ सीखा, क्या उस स्कूल की एजुकेशन की वजह से मैं आज कहाँ हूँ. So it also attracts a lot of talent for the future into the school as well. So I think that's another thing that I think that is that really stands out for me. And of course, like I said, they just want them to be good brand ambassadors for you, right? Because why are schools, like some have been around for like hundreds of years. Like look at a Doon or a Sanar or a Mayo. I mean, why are these schools, still so highly spoken about? Cody. It's because the alumni have been ambassadors, for those organizations and those schools. So yeah, I think those would be some of the top things.
Yeah. And another thing which I see when we go on Instagram and we see reels of suppose Grant Cardone or any billionaires in the world in the West.
Right.
So they are teaching their children money making skills from what? When they were 5, 6, 7. You were telling me a story about Grant Cardone's daughter when she was 7.
Yeah.
तो हमारे schools में हमें पैसे कमाना ही नहीं सिखाते. Money is like an evil in Indian society. I don't know why, but it actually solves 90 to 95% of your problems.
You're right. And I don't know why. Right?
Yeah.
It's like money is something you don't talk about.
Yeah.
And in Grant's case, of course, like Grant Cardone का तो ये होता था that when his daughters were even 3, 4, 5 साल की भी होती थी, उनको कुछ लेना था उनके लिए, तो Grant Cardone बोलता था कि get me some business. Because उस टाइम का Grant Cardone और आज के Grant Cardone में of course monetarily also बहुत फर्क है. And he would take his visiting cards, okay, and he would put them in the school bag of the girls, and he said, give this to your friends. And Elna Cardone भड़क जाती थी उसको, मतलब तू मतलब इतने बच्चों से, छोटे बच्चों से ऐसे काम करा रहा है. But he said that आपको नहीं पता कि इनके साथ जो स्कूल में पढ़ता है उसका फादर कौन है. हो सकता है he can get me an opportunity. So even from the age of 2, 3 and 4, the girls were thinking that it's not a problem to ask for business. I remember I was at GrowthCon in 2018, and the little one comes to me and she goes, hey, I hope you're doing business with my daddy. And I said, yeah, I'm doing business with daddy. But she's like, do you want his card? I said, no, I have his details. So point being, they were taught that prospecting is good. They were taught that prospecting is important. They were taught about the power of money. And even for our kids, I mean, we told them the importance of money and money management and being responsible around money. But somehow, and I don't know कहाँ से ये आई है, मतलब philosophy के पैसों के बारे में बात नहीं करते,
Yeah.
right? And हमारा तो यह था, like like in your case, we came from business family, so
Yeah.
conversations on the table were always around money,
Yeah.
always around the stock market. Like when I first came into stock market, it was Harshit Mehta का time. I was 15-16 years old. I said मैं तो shares खरीदने हैं, तो पापा ने बोला ठीक है बैंक अकाउंट खुलवा देते हैं, तो कर ले. तो ठीक है, कमाए भी घुसाए भी, तो but at least the education was there about money. So hence it was not that big a deal. I just wish that more parents would actually do that. And definitely, I think at schools they could talk more about money. That's something that they don't do enough of. And even there are certain programs that run like Millionaire Mind Intensive, which is a Success Gyan program that happens in Delhi. And when you come in there and you just see how broken people's money mindset is. And I think us training के start के अंदर एक 17 points का एक questionnaire होता है. Most people are not even ticking off 10. And ideally, you're supposed to tick off 60 to say that you have the right money mindset.
Oh.
But people just have their money mindset is broken.
That is the reality.
Yeah.
Do you think schools are intentionally teaching students to become followers rather than leaders?
अब इसका भी एक thought है, and there's a school of thought around this that Britishers के अंदर, what did the Britishers want, right? The Britishers wanted to just create civil servants. They wanted to create workers. They wanted to just create people who would feed the British machinery. Unfortunately, not much has changed, right? जो curriculum है, जो style of teaching है, उनके अंग्रेजों के ज़माने से ही चल रहा है अभी तक. So I think that has to change. हो रहा है, it has started to change, and I think today I see more and more young kids who are saying हमें entrepreneurship में घुसना है, right? हमें sales करना है, हमें money की ज़्यादा समझ चाहिए. I'm seeing a lot of that happening. I mean, some of my sessions I've seen kids as young as 16 and 17 coming in. I'm like, wow, what brings you here? And they're like, नहीं पापा ने बोला कि GB से तो आपको सीखना ही सीखना है. So it's great.
Amazing. Also, I was seeing some videos. So in the videos, one guy was saying कि जब हम grades बच्चों पर डालते हैं, so people get less creative and they choose the least resistant option to scoring high marks. So which is not the best always. And grades always and always make you less intelligent in life.
बिल्कुल. So again, my belief is that pick a course that you enjoy rather than something that you'll score highly in. And I see that a lot of people would say नहीं यार मुझे तो ये सब्जेक्ट लेके आने क्योंकि इसके अंदर स्कोरिंग बड़ी अच्छी है, लेकिन क्या आप enjoy करते हो उसको? And they'll be like नहीं. And that's what happens and further on in life also. They do things that they don't enjoy and they're doing it, just again for, the money or, for a matrix around that, which I think is unfortunate. My advice is do something that you enjoy, do something that you'll excel in because you enjoy. It shouldn't feel tedious. Like, when you wake up in the morning, you're like gunning to go, like you love your work, right? Same for me, right? I've been doing this now 30 years and, just love to get to office and just do what, one has to do. Yeah. But for most people, it's like, it's a task, it's tedious. And it's only because, अच्छा इसमें सुना है कि अच्छा से अपना सैलरी अच्छी है, आगे जंप अच्छे मिलेंगे, तो इसलिए हम कर लेते हैं, but enjoyment मतलब वो तो है ही नहीं.
So I was telling NIOS ma'am also that I was seeing a graph. So there's a graph, it's like a pie chart of unemployed people in the world or in India, I don't know.
Right.
So 3% out of those are the people who did not graduate. 30% are the people who graduated. And out of all the IITians in the world, 30 to 40% are unemployed.
Yeah.
So it's so surprising that what we are chasing is actually the opposite of what we will get.
Yeah. I'm not surprised because just last week I was with Mr. Shiv Khera, and Shiv Khera, of course, is the institution when it comes to, selling and all that. He gave me the same numbers. Like he says today, even people coming out of top colleges like the IITs and IIMs, he's like between 34 to 38% have no employment today. और ये आगे जाके और भी बुरे हाल होने वाले हैं. Right, because nobody knows क्या होने वाला है, AI के ज़माने के अंदर and everything and what's going to happen there. So it's scary times, and I wonder today, like जो बच्चों को सिखाया जा रहा है स्कूल के अंदर, मतलब उसकी रेलेवेंस और वैल्यू क्या है. एंड आज जो बच्चे बैठे हैं क्लासरूम के अंदर, वो भी टीचर को क्वेश्चन कर रहे हैं, राइट? एंड अगर उन्हें कुछ गलत बोल दिया तो हाथों हाथ उसी टाइम फैक्ट चेकिंग होकर उनको बता रहे, सर मैम आप तो गलत बता रहे हो, मतलब मैं तो आपको बता दूँ कि इसकी हिस्ट्री क्या है. और आप टूल्स देखो, जैसे नोटबुक LM एज अ टूल विच इज़ देयर, मतलब उसके अंदर आप कोई यूट्यूब की वीडियो डाल दो, कुछ भी PDF डाल दो, मतलब क्या ग्राफिक्स बन के आते हैं, क्या अपने इन्फोग्राफिक्स बन के आते हैं, पाई चार्ट्स बन के आते हैं, माइंड मैप्स बन के आते हैं. मतलब लर्निंग होनी चाहिए तो वैसी लर्निंग होनी चाहिए. बट हम अभी भी उनको बोल रहे हैं हाँ जी हिस्ट्री के अंदर औरंगजेब की डेट ऑफ बर्थ क्या थी, कब मरे, कब हुआ, शाहजहाँ ने क्या किया. ठीक है, आई नो, आई मीन हिस्ट्री इज नाइस टू नो, बट कम ऑन रियली. And even some of the stuff that's taught in math class and all that, and coding, मतलब उनको coding सिखा रहे हैं. I'm like, boss, मतलब prompt engineering मतलब वो सिखाई जा रही है. I'm like, boss, मतलब वो तो today you got something like prompt cowboy जो मतलब 5 सेकंड के अंदर आपको इतना धांसू prompt बना के दे देगा कि
Yeah.
किसने prompt engineering का कोर्स किया वो तो घुस गया अंदर,
Doesn't
जरूरत ही नहीं
matter.
है.
Yeah.
And this is only going to get worse,
Yeah,
right?
schooling needs to change big time in India, but I think they are trying also. But seeing at the quantum of people here, it takes a lot of time for change.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, again, like I said, it's going to happen, with time. I think that what schools really need to focus in on is language, is, communication, because people still struggle with that aspect. And that's not going away anytime soon. Like that need for, people. In fact, our last 5 hires all have somehow had some kind of, English honors or similar course that they've all done. And I find that they're, are the most valuable for me in the office right now. So it's interesting.
So there's a school in Texas. It's called Future of Learning. So what they are doing is their students are among the top 1% in US. They are just the students are coming to the school or campus, whatever they call it, and 2 hours they are just doing academics, and that too is happening from AI agents. तो वो सिर्फ AI agent से पढ़ते हैं, and rest of the time
Crazy.
the teachers are called enablers or something else, and they are doing selling or they are doing real life skills. They are applying. They are
Fantastic.
doing farming, and their students are topping the charts now.
Yeah. Brilliant. And that's the way it should be. And I think
Yeah.
that's a super concept. And I see this in the world of, training and coaching as well. So now we're talking like slightly older people. But 90% of the people who are there as trainers and coaches, and they have never themselves ever been an entrepreneur. Or they have never ever, experienced the
Yeah.
practical side of it. Theory
Yeah.
बड़ी अच्छी है उनकी.
Yeah.
Right? किताबें बहुत पढ़ी, उन्हें, कोर्सेस वोर्सेस भी किए होंगे. लेकिन उनका जो प्रैक्टिकल इम्प्लीमेंटेशन है उन्हें कभी किए नहीं. तो जब आपने कंपनी कभी चलाई नहीं तो आप कैसे किसी को बोल रहे हो कि भाई मतलब आप मेरा कोर्स करो, आपकी 90% सक्सेस रेट है. क्योंकि सबको पता है कि भाई मतलब जब आप एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप में आओगे 90% सक्सेस रेट तो बहुत दूर की बात, 80% आपका फेलियर रेट होगा.
Yeah.
लेकिन मतलब अब लपेटना है तो लपेटना है.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after talking about all this, तो आपके हिसाब से what are the 3 biggest mistakes which school students make while preparing for their future?
Okay, interesting. So I think a big mistake that they're doing is that they're doing things for their parents, okay, and because log kya bolenge. So I think that becomes a big reason why they don't go and actually follow something that would be closer to their heart or something that they might actually achieve well. So I think one is that they get influenced a lot by parents and commentary, etc. That's one big mistake that's happening. I think a second big mistake that I see a lot of kids making, especially in a certain set of schools, कि सबको बाहर भागने की काफ़ी डिज़ायर है कि नहीं जी विलायत जाना है, ऑस्ट्रेलिया में पढ़ेंगे, यूएसए में पढ़ेंगे, यूके में पढ़ेंगे. The future lies in India, right? I think what we have today, okay, just in terms of being in the ecosystem of this country, the growth we're having, the positivity that is there. मतलब I've spent a lot of time abroad as well, and I see USA के अंदर क्या हो रहा है, UK के अंदर क्या हो रहा है. मतलब वो लोग अंदर से अभी बहुत डाउन है. And I just think that here this is a country of a lot of positivity. No matter what is happening, हम बोले नहीं जी भगवान भरोसे सब ठीक होने वाला है. So I just think that staying back in India right now and focusing on learning here, being in entrepreneurship groups, joining other organizations, which will help, like the TYEs or even other entrepreneurship groups that are there, etc. I think that can be very powerful as well. So those would be 2 mistakes. What other mistake are people making? I think there is one set of people who are purely chasing money, and just going for the money aspect without really thinking on whether they'll have the long term why to be in that business. Because agar aap see, money can be a byproduct of your why, but money cannot be your why. तो बस अंदर से अपने आप को पूछो कि क्यों मैं करना चाह रहा हूँ या क्यों मैं करना चाह रही हूँ ये चीज़. लाइक सो आई थिंक दैट व्हाई, एंड साइमन सिनेक always talks about start with why. So it's not about the how, it's not about the what, it's about the why. And I think that's a big mistake that people are making, is that they don't know their why. एक मेरा दोस्त है, जब भी आपसे मिलेगा, किसी भी मिलेगा, सबसे पहले उनको पूछते हैं, you didn't ask what do you do, you didn't ask how do you do, he says why do you do what you do. पहला प्रश्न ही उसका ही है. और अगर उसको जवाब समझ नहीं आया ना, देन he'll just छोड़ या किसी और से बात करता हूँ. But it's about why do you do what you do. So why are you doing this podcast? Why do you run this great publishing company? These are things that people need to answer. So not having that in mind is a mistake that people make.
No, to be honest, if I am being very honest, even I don't have an answer to that. I've also read Start With Why. I've heard Simon Sinek. I really like it. But मुझे आंसर नहीं पता है अभी तक. बहुत ढूंढने की कोशिश करी, but ये आंसर, I think it is very easier said than done, because when you actually think about it, you don't understand. You start creating things.
So It's an interesting situation, and काफी हद तक लोगों को ये होता भी है कि
Yeah.
okay, I haven't found my why, I haven't found my
Yeah.
purpose, which is fine.
Yeah.
But some will come much later.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I think my why piece came into play maybe 2016. So I'm talking about I'm already now 40 years old. Okay,
What
before.
is your why?
So my why, in at least in the area of let's say the Gaurav Bhagat Academy, which is my training business, okay, it's a number I have in mind, which is 409000000. Okay, and that's to take 100,000 entrepreneurs, okay, and help them add 100 jobs in their companies. So 100,000 entrepreneurs adding 100 jobs
Yeah.
impacts a family, let's say an average of 4 people. So what you've done is you've empowered now 4 crore people directly
Yeah.
or indirectly, and also take 9 lakh working professionals and students and graduating students and help them live what is the 10x life. So 10x life is a life without limitations. It's about walking to a restaurant, opening the menu, and eating what you want to eat because you want to eat it by looking on the left side and not the right side and saying rate kiska kitna hai.
Yeah.
Right, walking into a shop and buying something without having to actually look at the price tag. So that's my why when it comes to the training and coaching space, is to impact 4 crore 9 lakh people, and help them live the 10x life. So that's why I do what I do.
Oh, makes sense. Now, what are 3 uncomfortable truths about success or money that school doesn't teach students?
The top one is the fact that there will be it'll be a roller coaster ride. Okay, there'll be ups and there'll be downs. Sometimes there'll be more downs than ups, and there'll be times you'll feel like giving up. Okay, but that's when you just got to keep going. Okay, so I think that's one aspect, that there will be a lot of downs. It is going to be a roller coaster ride. Okay, so I think that is going to be one big uncomfortable truth that people aren't told. They're just told, नहीं आप बस करो, आप सीधा ऊपर जाओगे. That's not going to happen. I think another thing that's going to happen, or another thing that's very, very true, which people kind of, get wrong, is that not everyone is your well-wisher, right? And there'll be people sometimes, who'll be really in your close inner circle, and even they'll stab you in the back.
Yeah.
So, be willing, to have that, happen as well. And I think another offset of that is the fact that, haters will hate. So there will be people, who will discriminate. There will be people who will say bad things. आज वैसे भी सोशल मीडिया का ज़माना है, तो लोग बोलते हैं अरे किसी ने ऐसा कमेंट डाला तो कमेंट सेक्शन में कुछ आया तो थोड़ा बुरा मान लेते हैं. Again, the point is, don't take it to heart. You cannot make everyone happy. It's not, if you're selling ice cream, there'll be people who say, यार तेरे वजह से मुझे sugar हो गया, diabetes हो गया. So you can't make everyone happy. I think just understand that, and just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, so the major point of this conversation we are having today is that school should teach entrepreneurship, sales, and the real things which you are doing every day.
Yeah, real life skills that will set you up for success, or maybe not even immediate success, but at least longer term success is going to come by virtue of the discussion, the skills that we spoke about today, for sure.
So if you had the power to redesign the education system, what are the things you will add in today's school education?
Interesting. So I would definitely bring in a course on entrepreneurship early, and I would promote it. And it would not be theoretical entrepreneurship. It'll be actually creating something, monetizing it, okay, going out there and selling it in your neighborhood, friends, family, whatever. And there has to be, based on, the business that was created. I think that should be created. So I'd definitely bring in, entrepreneurship as one of those courses. And my matrix, for success on that would be revenue earned or impact made, but there has to be something around that. So I think that would be definitely one thing. I think the other aspect would be, of course, just changing the money mindset. So getting people into investing earlier, getting people into even starting with something, like, it's 100 rupees, but putting into like an SIP or something that just gets them into the habit of saving.
Financial literacy.
I started saving like too late in life. It was almost like I was almost married, right? When my wife to be is like, so what's your savings like? I'm like, what's savings? I'm like, I just make it and I blow it.
Yeah.
But I think that is, kind of a big issue. So I think money management would be the second. And of course, I mean, I'm just divided between, sales and AI, but a combo of both of those would be very, very critical, where you have to, of course, get them selling, but also using AI to solve real world problems, right? That's something that's happening day to day. घर पे कोई issue है, या दोस्तों के साथ कुछ issue है. Like just a couple of days ago, my son tells me he's creating an app on Emergent where he's creating a trading card game where there's going to be Mortal Kombat and Pokemon and whatever else, trading cards are going to be doing. But he's creating something on Emergent, which he's going to then, circulate amongst his friends, and it becomes a trading card ecosystem. Yeah. It's a problem that, they were facing, and, it's being addressed. So I think that more of that, really has to happen. And don't discourage entrepreneurship. I think that's a really bad thing. And don't discourage sales. Right? Don't discourage the need for children to ask. कभी कभार हम बोलते हैं यार बच्चे मांगते बहुत हैं, बस मांगने दो. राइट, जो बंदा बच्चा मांगता है ना वो आगे जाके बहुत बहुत दूर जाएगा इन लाइफ. सो those would be some of the things that I would recommend.
I think along with the schools, parents also play a huge part in doing all this, because I was seeing somebody. So what the father did was, since the child was 7 or 6 years old,
Right.
whenever they went to a restaurant or कहीं भी जाते थे, so he asked the child to order his own food and call the waiter by the name and just say whatever his name was, Anil, please come here and I want to order this. So that irritated him in the beginning. But after 10 or 15 years, when he realized that when he was doing it all the while, so it added so much value in his life. और छोटी छोटी चीजें बहुत हेल्प करती हैं लाइफ.
Amazing, and I think so true. And the thing is that today parents are, in a lot of cases, there may be both working parents. So they go off in the morning at 9 o'clock and they aren't back till like maybe 8-9 o'clock at night. So parenting has now been outsourced. एक तो स्कूल के अंदर दे लाइक चलो ठीक है बच्चा 3-3:30 बजे आएगा, because today schools are also keeping kids longer. And then उसके बाद देखो they'll do a little bit of their activities and then do a little sports, tuitions कर के maybe at dinner they'll have a conversation. अच्छा, how was your day? And on weekends, there may be some, catch-ups where everyone's probably on their gadgets now. That's another, big pandemic that's actually come in, is that everyone's on their phones or gadgets or doing their own thing. Homes have become bigger. Grandparents are no longer, in the picture. Homes are nuclear homes now. Joint families bhi nahi hai. So even grandparents ka utna impact nahi hai. And I think spending time with grandparents is great for children. Right? In our case, like, when the kids come back from school, we say go and spend 2 weeks with your grandparents, because unka jo impact hai, they're able to give them a lot of time, and the values and all of that stuff as well. I think that works really good too. So mistakes that are being made is that parents are just thinking, yeah, it's the school's job, it's not my job. That's incorrect actually.
Do you think homeschooling will overtake traditional schooling?
No, not here.
No,
because it's too out there. Again, the parents have to have the time to homeschool. I mean, sometime might happen that yes, there's a husband or a wife that's actually working, and the other one is not, so that person can kind of get more involved as well. Even for some of the super wealthy, I'm seeing that it's an experiment. They might do it for a couple of years. So they might take them out of school for a couple of years. They might try the homeschooling, might do the entire travel piece. But eventually they want them to come back, because let's not forget, एक तो जो education है जो हमको सीखने को मिलता है वो एक चीज़ है, लेकिन the other thing is also the network.
The social skills.
Right, yeah, the social skills and also the network. I mean, now I've passed out of like 3 schools many years ago, but जब 25th reunion हुआ था मैं सबके पे गया, Columbus में भी गया, सनार में भी गया, DPS में भी गया, and I'm in touch with all those people. We doing business together, we golf together, we occasionally get together for a game of poker, whatever it is. But the point is, that bonding remains. And I think if you take a child out of that environment and totally decide to homeschool all through, they might be stunted in terms of their social skills. Yeah.
Amazing. I really enjoyed this conversation, because this was one of the very few conversations I've had which was very free flowing about life, not only schools but life in general, parenting, students.
Those are questions that made me think. Normally at a podcast it's like but then okay, you had like great questions and it really made me think as well. But I think you're doing amazing, and really, I think everyone who's following your podcast, from the students, the parents, the faculty at schools and colleges, great stuff. Yeah, and I think this is really what the world needs more of. So
we are still not ending. We just have a last rapid fire round.
Okay,
so I'll ask a question and you have to answer it quickly.
Okay.
So marks or skills?
Skills.
Confidence or intelligence?
Confidence.
Why?
Well, it's just that, I mean, intelligence, I think it's a little bookish. I think confidence, you can actually get a lot more done with it. And I also believe, like in sales, the most convinced will be the most convincing.
Yeah.
And confidence and conviction go hand in hand.
Absolutely. Entrepreneurship or job security?
Entrepreneurship.
One skill every student must learn before leaving school?
One skill that every student must learn before leaving school. Again, it's a tough one. I would say sales.
One thing schools must stop doing immediately?
Discouraging the use of AI.
One message for students who believe marks define their future?
You're going to have a reality check in future. So yeah, marks is not everything.
Perfect. Thank you, Gaurav sir. It was very nice having you on the podcast.
Like I said, it's a pleasure, and keep doing the amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you.